Living with my boyfriend's family got tense. After a heated morning, his mom texted to apologize. Yet blame shifted to Robert again. I apologize in advance since this post will be lengthy. I, a 24-year-old female, and Robert, a 22-year-old male, have been in a relationship for 4 years. Unfortunately, I have undergone several emergency eye surgeries, resulting in a $10,500 deductible and $3,000 for college tuition. We are both students. I am pursuing my master's degree in psychology, while he is on track to become a marine biologist. This situation caused us to lose our apartment and forced us to move in with his parents. To provide some background, we are both Latinos, which is important to note. I am not particularly slender. While I am not excessively large, I do have a bigger physique. The day before I met his mother, Robert informed me that his mom disapproved of his first girlfriend because she was too shy to speak. I thought to myself, well, I am shy too, but it can go either way. I can talk a lot or I can speak less. When I arrived at their house, she hesitated before hugging me and then remarked that Robert has always preferred women with fuller figures. Keep in mind that Robert is slim, though somewhat toned, while the rest of his family is quite thin. Since that moment, they have felt entitled to comment on my eating habits, even though I am quite a picky eater and my body. Robert has a sister who has a disability and cannot speak, see, walk, or move much. Now, regarding our current situation, his parents are aware of our predicament, and one day when we were visiting, they offered us the opportunity to stay with them until we could get back on our feet, free of charge, with the condition that we help around the house, take care of his sister, and save money. Robert and I were left speechless, and to be honest, we felt like failures. That day, we cried together because, at that moment, we had no options. We lacked the funds for groceries, rent, or utility bills. I proposed we find part-time jobs or that I could take on extra shifts to ensure we could remain there without imposing on them. After a week, we decided to accept their offer. I cautioned Robert that I had experienced similar situations before when I was younger and that it usually led to depression, potentially impacting our relationship. There is a saying in Spanish that after 3 days, a guest begins to smell. It suggests that staying too long at someone else's home can create tension. I gave ourselves 6 months to leave. We moved in around November 2024, and everything seemed fine for the first week. I opted to start therapy because I anticipated potential issues. After the first week, I sensed that tensions were beginning to rise. Robert's mother would comment on everything I did or ate. I chose to ignore her remarks and decided not to mention it to my partner, as I did not want to create awkwardness between us due to his mother. By the 3rd week, Robert's stepfather asked to speak with him directly and requested rent money, which Robert agreed to without consulting me first. I was confused about their change of heart after only a month. I had been buying and preparing our own meals because I anticipated complaints if I were to use their food even though they had offered it. Robert came to me in frustration, and I agreed that we could pay rent, but I warned it would hinder our ability to save, as I was planning to pay off my medical bills more quickly. We had to contribute $350. While this may not seem excessive to some, it is a significant amount when living on minimum wage, where I barely make $900 biweekly. I initially thought they might use our rent to cover some bills, such as water and electricity, but from my experience with renting, I knew we were not incurring more than $400 in utility costs since we were rarely home due to work and school. I let it go for the time being. The daily comments became increasingly frequent. Around mid-December, Robert expressed concerns that we were bothering them, even though we stayed in the basement all day, only going upstairs to shower and cook. I shared my feelings with him about what was happening during our stay, and he asked me to hang in there just a bit longer, assuring me we would soon be out. Around that time, some kids attempted to break into his car, shattering a window and damaging the ignition. Understandably, we were upset since we only had one car, and with Christmas approaching, we were anxious about affording the repairs. We were focused on how to handle the situation ourselves, but his mother stormed downstairs, angry, and told Robert to manage his emotions, claiming she had endured more than he had, and told him to toughen up and deal with it. She insisted we could use his stepdad's truck after that, and then left. Although we did not want to impose further, we planned to use public transportation, but they insisted otherwise. During this time, I fell ill. Since they are very protective due to his sister's health issues, I started wearing a mask and gloves for cooking, opting to eat in the basement. Apparently, they also had a problem with my desire to snack or eat anything downstairs, bringing it up with Robert instead of addressing it directly with me, which frustrated me, as his excuses for my actions weren't accurate, like claiming I was tired, just to keep the peace. Starting January, we managed to pay for the car repairs and reclaim our vehicle. Like many others, we decided to join a gym for $10 a month. Robert gained some weight over the holidays, leading to hurtful comments from his mother that made him feel self-conscious. I encouraged him to go to the gym with his friends, as I felt uncomfortable attending. Instead, I said I would do my workouts in the basement. We informed them that Robert would be leaving the house at 4:30 a.m. for the gym, and she agreed this was fine. However, not 5 minutes later, she rushed to us, speaking in an unnecessarily loud tone, stating, "Oh, you can't do that. There is a significant storm coming. You need to move the car behind the truck so that your stepdad doesn't have to move yours, and you need to take a shower after we finish with the bathroom." Robert remained silent, so I interjected, "Yes, we understand we have to do that. We already agreed. As for the winter storm, we were unaware, but that's fine. We can start another day." The morning after the winter storm, Robert left for the gym. I also exercised and showered early to avoid disrupting their morning routine. The only thing I did was go upstairs at 6:10 a.m. to boil some eggs. I asked Robert's mom if she wanted some, and she replied with a yes, just one. I set the eggs on to boil and returned to the basement. By 6:20 a.m., Robert arrived, and I informed him that the eggs were not yet ready and we would need to wait a bit longer before eating. We both went back downstairs to stay out of their way, but he noticed the bathroom was free and went to shower. I remained in the basement. At 6:50 a.m., we both headed to the kitchen upstairs, and I started serving him coffee, eggs, and crackers. I sensed a palpable tension in the air, and as soon as his stepdad left at 7 a.m., she began yelling at us for being upstairs at 6 a.m., claiming we were interrupting her routine with feeding his sister and causing her distress. Robert said nothing, and I was already exhausted by her attitude. I replied that all I had done was boil an egg and matched her energy since she never allows anyone to speak. I suggested that next time, we could wait until 7 a.m. to cook and eat. She then responded that she needed her space and that we were invading it at 6 a.m. I reiterated that I was simply boiling an egg and left while it cooked, insisting that if she wanted her space, we would adapt and eat our prepared meals at work. She departed the kitchen to care for his sister, and we left for work. Later that day at 3 p.m., I received a text from her apologizing for the morning incident. She expressed that she did not intend to make me feel bad and reassured me that I was a good person she had grown fond of. I chose not to respond to the text, nor did I leave her on read. I opted to address it in person, believing that face-to-face conversations are more appropriate. She was in her craft room when I entered, and she immediately approached for a hug, asking for forgiveness. I patted her on the back and informed her, "Let me speak first, and then you can decide if you still want that hug." She repeatedly apologized and reiterated that she did not want to upset me. I clarified that I was not angry and that it takes a lot to actually anger me, given my upbringing with 6 siblings, which has instilled a great deal of patience in me. I explained that her outbursts could have been avoided if she had communicated her feelings, instead of allowing herself to become irritated and voicing complaints in front of Robert. I told her I would respect her wishes and would not go upstairs until 7 a.m. to simply drink coffee, which I do not drink, but he does, since we needed to leave by 7:15 a.m. to get to work in another city. I reminded her that this was not the first instance of her outbursts and that she had been critical of us since November, but both Robert and I had been silent about it. She denied this, then started crying, lamenting that Robert left without saying goodbye to his sister. I pointed out that since she had made a scene, we had stepped away to honor her request for space. She continued to evade responsibility, blaming Robert for everything, claiming he should listen to her and save money to buy a house. I assured her that we were actively working on that and had been discussing it with several people. She became offended and demanded to know when we had talked about it, implying that we should have kept her informed about every detail of our lives. I explained that we are not required to share every aspect of our plans and that Robert would inform her when he was ready. I conveyed how uncomfortable we felt since they seemed annoyed by our mere presence. I sympathized with the fact that everyone has different habits that might clash, but I urged her not to wait until she was angry to voice her concerns. Instead, we could openly discuss issues as they arise. By the end of our dialogue, I believed things were resolved, and I headed back to the basement to change out of my work clothes before preparing dinner, informing Robert of our conversation. Afterward, when we both returned upstairs, she called him into her craft room separately, where she again blamed him and played the victim without taking accountability. Robert remained silent throughout her accusations and left as soon as she finished, while she continued to cry. We both understood that, at any moment, his stepdad would likely pull Robert aside to intimidate him over his mother's feelings. I advised Robert that if they began discussing anything related to that day or to us, he should ensure I was included, as they shouldn't bring up discussions about me without allowing me to defend myself. He agreed, and although she hasn't confronted him since, some tensions between her and me appear to have arisen over the months, which have necessitated me defending myself. From November until now, we've faced challenges, and even Robert has noticed a shift in my demeanor. However, I keep telling him I warned him this could happen. I have not yet had a breakdown because I feel compelled to be the strong one, but I expect I will crumble once we are out of this situation. Recently, she mentioned the idea of a joint bank account for us, suggesting Robert should go to the bank to set this up. I questioned when we had discussed this, as we had previously agreed to establish a joint account only when we purchased a house. He explained that since I was going to sign papers to become a personal care aide for his sister, the funds would be placed into that account. I was puzzled because while I had agreed to something, I planned to use the funds in my savings account for any future need. At that time, my work schedule was from 7 a.m. to early afternoon due to a work project, which Robert had managed to align with for that 2-week period. On the final day, she asked if I would still be leaving at 4 p.m., and I responded no. Why would you say that? This led to the discussion about the joint bank account again. I expressed my confusion about why she had brought this up with Robert, asserting that we had agreed to do something different, and I reiterated that the funds would go into my personal account instead. She then manufactured an excuse, claiming that his car was emitting smoke that morning. They had moved the car without allowing it to warm up first on a cold winter day. I asked what that had to do with our conversation. Then she claimed, "Oh, it is so you guys can use the money in case of an emergency." I responded that thanks to their support, we had been able to save for such situations, and if Robert faced difficulties, I could contribute the remainder. She persisted, vetoing the idea of my savings account, insisting that the funds needed to be placed in a joint bank account. I raised my voice slightly, matching her tone, reminding her of my own bank. She eventually surrendered, saying, "Fine, use your bank." In conclusion, I have come to the decision that I will not take on the responsibility of caring for Robert's sister and will not sign any papers to do so, as I must balance work, school, and an internship without the capacity to care for her or my younger sister. Yesterday, on February 14, she reached out to Robert during lunch, and the topic of a joint bank account arose again, along with conversations about funding for his classes and when I would sign the documents. He indicated that I had decided against it, albeit without delving into detail. She continued rambling about random topics, but Robert asserted that this was a discussion I should partake in and that we could address it at home. What she let loose next was, "Oh, I see how it is," taking offense to his assertion and attempting to manipulate him with guilt. He ended the call. "So, Reddit, I sincerely apologize for the lengthy post, but am I the antagonist for not taking care of my boyfriend's sister?" Story 2. Valentine's Day ruined. We argued over chores, he slept while I worked, and now he's out with friends instead of resolving things. We have been together for 2.5 years. Yesterday morning, he surprised me with flowers and a card, while I gave him some thoughtful gifts, and everything seemed positive. Later, he went out to meet a friend for lunch at a nice restaurant, which I was perfectly fine with since I worked from home. He returned after an hour, completing just a couple of work tasks by attending Teams meetings, and then relaxed on the couch while scrolling through his phone, all while I was busy working in the same room. He then asked if I wanted to go shopping for curtains, and I suggested we take a relaxing day instead since we have a dinner reservation that evening and usually have packed schedules. Truthfully, I was mainly suggesting it because I knew curtain shopping wasn't his preferred activity. In a light-hearted, endearing manner, I asked if he could please pack away the raclette grill he had borrowed from his uncle, which wouldn't take long. We had used it a few days earlier when he hosted friends for dinner and football, and I had taken care of virtually all the hosting and cleaning. When I made that suggestion, he responded, I will do it later. I'm tired right now, I just want to relax." In a jovial tone, I asked, "Why are you tired already? It's only 3 p.m., and you've had an easy day enjoying lunch with your friend while only working for a short time." He shrugged and said he did not know why he was tired. I joked, saying it felt like I was with an old man. He playfully agreed, saying, "I am an old man." But then he said, "Babe, you always request that I handle chores and I just want to rest." By resting, he meant lying on the couch, mindlessly watching reels or chatting with his friends. Just to clarify, he consistently does this and often uses the "I'm tired" excuse, which I can understand only if we've had a long day or he's been busy at work. However, many times, I find it hard to comprehend, and it can become somewhat frustrating to hear that as a response. Continuing with our conversation, I felt irritated because I consistently clean, organize, do laundry, and prepare meals in our apartment daily, often cleaning up after him without making it a point. I am more than willing to do it, yet whenever I ask him for 1 or 2 minor tasks, he replies with, "Oh, later, I just want to chill, I'm tired, you always ask me to do chores." And he usually takes his time getting to it, or he simply does not do it, leaving me to finish it. It feels misleading for him to portray me as this wicked stepmother, always asking him to do household chores, which adds to my frustration and leaves me feeling unappreciated, especially given all I contribute. I previously mentioned that I dislike when he says that to me, and I have communicated it in gentle and affectionate ways without making a fuss, hoping to convey that it bothers me when he implies I am untrue to my efforts for us. When I expressed how I felt about his comment, he dismissed it with a joke and continued scrolling through his phone and vaping like a kid. Meanwhile, I was not just having a busy workday but also dealing with discomfort from menstrual issues, and I had quit nicotine 5 days ago after a decade, making it a particularly challenging time for me, yet I was still managing well. He then got up to grab a drink and noticed I had become quiet. He asked if I was upset, and I responded, "I don't know," while continuing to type. He didn't probe further and retreated to the bedroom, where he lay on the bed absorbed in his phone and fell asleep for 3 hours while I continued working. About an hour and a half later, I realized we needed to prepare for our dinner reservation, so I went to the room, and he was awake, mindlessly scrolling. At that moment, I felt very frustrated, as he had left me to work alone, fully aware I appeared upset and dealing with pain while needing support from him. I asked, "What's going on? Are you staying here or joining me for dinner?" He had spent the whole day in the room, while we could have enjoyed each other's company since he had little to do, especially considering it was Valentine's Day. I was visibly frustrated, but kept my voice calm and did not raise it. He acted surprised as if I had spoken a foreign language, responding, "I was asleep." I reminded him that I had walked by the room twice in the last 40 minutes, where he was laughing and scrolling on his phone. I expected him to check on me and see how I was doing while I worked hard, especially since I hadn't even taken a lunch break. Suddenly, he came into the living room, looking angry, saying, "What's your problem? I can't even relax for a minute. You came into the room and attacked me." His reaction and lack of understanding made me angrier. Instead of considering how he could have been a more supportive partner, he chose to react like an adolescent living alone. By that point, I didn't even want to go to dinner anymore, and his comment, "We need to leave soon, aren't you getting ready?" only added to my frustration. It felt like I had done something terrible to him. To summarize, we ended up rushing to dinner, both in a state of frustration. We barely spoke, and if we did, it was only to argue quietly. I barely touched my food and we left the restaurant. He accused me of ruining the day and blamed me entirely, which felt pointless. Back at home, I slept on the couch and he went to the bedroom. This morning, he went for a hike and lunch with his other friends, returning at 4 p.m., asking, "Hey, what's up? Want to go curtain shopping?" as if nothing had happened. I replied, "Not really, not sorry." He responded with visible annoyance, like a child who couldn't play along, and went back to the bedroom, which further agitated me. I followed him and explained that if he intended to pretend nothing had occurred, it wouldn't work for me. He had significantly upset me, and yesterday's events had taken a toll. I cannot simply return to normal without him acknowledging his part and offering an apology. It just doesn't sit right with me to have such a chaotic day and coast back to normal the following day. As expected, a heated argument ensued. He clung to his belief that everything was my fault and discarded any notions of compassion or attempting to calmly understand my perspective, ultimately storming out once again. I told him that until he recognized his role in this and apologized, moving on wouldn't work, and he needed to get back to me soon, not days later through silence while I waited for him to feel ready to talk. He agreed but mentioned he would briefly visit his mother and take care of a few errands before returning. Now, 4 hours later, he is still out. I called him, but there was no answer. I am certain he is with his friends, enjoying drinks or playing darts, ignoring my call. It seems absurd to me that I am left here at home feeling resentful and being ignored while he is out having a good time, seemingly indifferent to my feelings and our unresolved issues. I feel quite disheartened, as it seems he does not appreciate all the things I do for him. His constant exclamations of, "I'm tired," and his tendency to lounge on the couch while scrolling through his phone gives me an uncomfortable impression. I cannot tell if it's just me or if he is genuinely being unreasonable.